The Ukrainian intelligence services have very good connections inside occupied Ukraine as well as in Russia, and they're very good at collecting information for these strikes as well as the effect of them. So it's very likely that the commander of the Black Sea Fleet has been killed, as well as some senior officers involved in defending the south. So this is a very important hit for the Ukrainians.
Russia, as usual, is not acknowledging these killings, but what would you now expect Moscow to do to avenge these strikes?
Well, there's not much they can do that they're not already doing, to be quite frank. I mean, they're continuing to attack civilian infrastructure. I expect that will step up in the coming months as the winter bites. They're doing all they can on the battlefield, so there's not much they can do there. But this is a strike that will hurt the Russians and really is a demonstration of the growing sophistication and reach of Ukraine's long-range strike capabilities.
Is that what did it? Because I think I read some suggestions that other forms of air power may have been involved, but you're pretty certain these were launched from land way back in Ukraine itself.
Not so much launched from land. It looks like these were the Scalp missiles launched from the Su-24 aircraft. But they're gradually conducting more of these strikes, but also further away from Ukraine, not just in occupied Crimea, but also in Russia itself.
Yeah, understood. Now, Vladimir Zelensky has confirmed, Mick, that US Abrams tanks are now in service in Ukraine. These were first offered quite some time ago, but I guess training was required. What difference do you think their arrival is going to make to the pace of Ukrainian counter-offensives?
Well, 30 tanks isn't going to make a significant battlefield difference, to be quite frank. It's more a political statement of United States support. There is talk about another follow-on shipment. At the end of the day, 30 tanks isn't enough for a battalion of tanks. We're going to see a lot more. Fortunately, the Americans have thousands of Abrams they can provide, far more than the number of Leopard 2s that were ever built. And hopefully we'll see hundreds of more Abrams on their way to Ukraine soon.
Yeah, there's a lot more coming from the United States in general when it comes to military donations. Less, though, from neighbouring Poland. It seems to have reached the limits of its military generosity. Mick, this is after the country's Prime Minister, for those who haven't been following it, ruled a line in the sand and said no more new weapons until we have restocked. Now, this would be worrying for Ukraine, wouldn't it?
Well, I spoke to some people when I was passing through Warsaw on this very television conference that the Prime Minister did. People in the audience said, in some respects, he's been misquoted. It wasn't about Poland cutting Ukraine off. It was just saying, we've had to pause some of the equipment because we've given so much, hundreds of main battle tanks and artillery systems. We just need to restock. So it's not a statement of we're not supporting Ukraine, we're just pausing some of the equipment deliveries until we restock.
But how long would that typically take? I mean, every week and every month is vital. Poland's role as a sort of a transport hub also important. You don't think there's any deeper fracture here that would delay much needed weapons donations?
Well, there's certainly always issues between neighbouring countries, but Poland and Ukraine are working through those, especially on the grain deal. That is an issue. But this is more about capacity to provide additional equipment. Poland's providing all kinds of support, whether it's hosting refugees, hosting transshipment hubs, being a maintenance facility for a lot of Ukrainian equipment. So, we need to be careful not reading too much into this, but that's not to say there aren't some tensions there.
Yeah, and we'll keep across the grain side of this with the EU in further discussions, perhaps when you get back to Australia. Mick, but finally, since you are in Kyiv, not for the first time, what are you observing about the current phase of fighting in your conversations there? Almost 600 days into this war. Is it tougher going, do you observe, than when you were last there?
Well, certainly the situation's changed in the past 6 months. The counter-offensive has been launched in the south. The strategic strikes have really expanded over that time. And what we're seeing in the south is Ukrainians slowly chewing their way through this second line of defence of the Surovikin line. They haven't broken through yet. We couldn't call it that. But certainly they've broken in. They've breached. We're seeing more Ukrainian armoured vehicles come forward, which is a positive sign, but we could not describe it as a breakthrough just yet.